My name is Jennifer Daichi Pratt, and this is a dissertation proposal. The title is Perceptions of Faculty Support by Adjunct Developmental Education Faculty in an Urban Texas Community College District. This is being presented in partial fulfillment of the requirements for the degree of Doctor of Education. The face of developmental education delivery is changing as more adjunct faculty are being utilized in classrooms. The use of part-time faculty offers both benefits and drawbacks. One primary issue with the current debate over utilization of adjunct faculty is the lack of research analyzing how adjunct faculty are supported in performance of their assignments. This study, in response to a previously completed dissertation study focusing on this topic, offers an updated examination of extant literature and presents qualitative data from adjunct faculty surveys that will begin to address the deficiencies in this literature. In 2000, Lewis conducted a dissertation study focusing on the perceptions of adjunct faculty on support services offered at a suburban Texas community college district. The focus of the study was to personalize the understanding of how adjunct faculty support needs are or are not being met by their administrations. The importance of replication studies is really something that's not talked about a lot. And in the realm of sociological research, repetition is aimed at finding similar results. It's looked upon as a necessity, but replication studies rarely seem to actually be conducted. Lindsay and Ehrenberg in 1993 discussed the importance of replication in presenting generalizable results and not just isolated findings. They state that an isolated study remains virtually meaningless and useless in itself. Most importantly is the discussion of the differences between an original study and a replication in order to ascertain that the results are consistent despite any differences between the studies. So the current study will focus on a sample population from an urban rather than suburban community college, and the current study will focus on developmental education faculty in order to frame responses exclusively to the developmental education context. Adjunct faculty comprise a majority of the instructors delivering developmental education courses. As such, their training and continued professional support is essential to ensure high-quality instruction. However, despite the American Federation of Teachers' establishment of a set of standards for the professional support of adjunct faculty, there's a lack of universal consistency in how adjunct faculty are supported. Studies show that institutions with a vested interest in developing their adjunct faculty's instructional skills ensure quality of instruction and retention of faculty. But what is not clear is which professional development and supports offer the best solutions for adequately training and retaining adjunct faculty. Furthermore, there is no consistent reporting of adjunct faculty perceptions of their own needs and how well those needs are being met. This problem of inconsistency in support of adjunct faculty affects how administrations develop their programs, and this can have dramatic impact on student and thus program success. As Boylan and Saxon in 2012 assert, developmental programs are far more successful when their personnel have been trained to work with developmental students. By extending the extant literature to include the types of support which are seen as most beneficial by adjunct faculty, administration may be able to make better decisions about which supports to offer. The purpose of this study is to provide literature review and data that will help administrators make informed decisions about best practices in developmental education, adjunct faculty professional development and support, which will increase faculty competency in delivering instruction to developmental education students. This study is entirely qualitative in nature, and for the purposes of consistency, the terms part-time faculty and adjunct faculty will be used interchangeably. Far too often, adjunct faculty are left to sink or swim in environments for which they are unprepared to teach. This is frequently due to a lack on the part of administration to assist and adequately support adjuncts. Providing support for adjunct faculty is a simple solution to one of the largest problems facing developmental education programs, especially considering that over 65% of courses are taught by part-time faculty. In point of fact, Boylan and Saxon in 2012 state that providing training to adjunct faculty teaching developmental courses is probably one of the most cost-effective investments community college administrators can make. This study is going to provide an examination of the perceptions of adjunct faculty on which professional development opportunities and support services are most important to them, and which are continually offered at the urban community college district in developmental education administration. I'll be utilizing two main theoretical frameworks, the first of which is the communities of practice theory, which provides one of the frameworks for the study. Wenger, McDermott, and Snyder describe communities of practice as groups of people who share a common passion for something they do and learn together how to do better. A community of practice has three characteristics: domain, community, and practice. All participants in the community share a common interest, the domain. They engage in shared activities as a community, and they practice their passion. This framework is consistent with this study because participants share the domain of being developmental education faculty. Participants are a community by virtue of being community college faculty, and participants actively engage in delivering developmental education curriculum. The second theoretical framework lies in the theory of phenomenological research. Phenomenology is the idea that all humans share a lived experience, wherein the only difference is the perception of that experience. And my citation here is Giorgio, 2004. The participants in this study share the same lived experience of being adjunct faculty in developmental education programs at an urban community college. The participants' responses to the survey items will reflect differing perceptions of the same lived experience. My research hypotheses are in two different sets. The first is that there are two major questions in terms of the differences between the in which institutional supports are valued and how often those institutional support needs are met. And we'll be looking at 4 different categories of adjunct faculty, which I'll speak to the categorization a little bit later. The last 4 questions deal with the differences among those categorization groups. So they're all pretty generic as in terms of significant difference on the research instrument items between the perceptions of the support's value and then the perception of if those valued needs are being met. This is a beginning list of the definition of terms that I'll address later. I'm going to be adding to this as research necessitates further terminology. The assumptions and limitations of this study, there are several assumptions. The first of which is that survey responses from adjunct developmental education faculty are only from one urban Texas community college, but are representative and generalizable to all adjunct developmental education faculty. The second is that participant responses to the survey instrument are given freely and honestly. And the third is that the survey instrument provides accurate data to analyze in regard to adjunct developmental education faculty's perceptions. The limitations are that this is only one urban community college. The second limitation is that we're obviously relying on the honesty of participant responses. And the third limitation is that this particular urban community college is decentralized, which means that each branch works with some autonomy, and this may need to be considered for future institutional policy decision making. In terms of the literature review, the current study will present a contemporary literature review to update that which was completed by Lewis in 2000. The purpose of providing an updated review on the literature extant is to identify differences that may exist in how adjunct faculty utilization is viewed now as opposed to when Lewis conducted the previous study. The current study will provide an analysis of current utilization of adjunct faculty in the developmental education setting as well. This literature review will be broken down into various different components, which will follow a summary now. The first is the institutional use of adjunct faculty. Lewis in 2000 found that the literature presented a discussion of how institutions make use of adjunct faculty for the betterment, mostly financial, of the institution rather than the faculty member. Because adjunct faculty are paid less, are not required to receive benefits, and can be renewed or not quarterly, they make good human capital for institutions seeking to minimize budgets. In addition, adjunct faculty fill a specific niche in teaching nighttime and off-hour courses that institutions find are in higher demand for today's students. The update on it, this particular topic, is that studies of adjunct faculty use in developmental education classrooms examine the negatives and positives of utilizing part-time educators in the classroom. The importance of this has been explored because of the continued increase in the numbers of adjunct faculty utilized by 2- and 4-year universities. In 2003 and again in 2005, 2 different studies showed the majority of instructors at institutions are part-time faculty. This increase has prompted studies to examine the efficacy of adjunct faculty in delivering education content. Unfortunately, the majority of literature focuses on the use of adjunct faculty across the whole institution and not specifically in developmental education classrooms. The second issue would be that of the troublesome issues in the use of adjunct faculty. Lewis in 2000 discusses the common belief in the literature that adjunct instructors deliver poor quality instruction and lack permanent commitment to the institution while receiving less supervision than their full-time counterparts. In addition, the lack of state or federally regulated ratios for employment of full versus part-time faculty results in an overutilization of adjunct faculty at many institutions. The lack of guidelines from accrediting agencies results in broad, subjective interpretations each institution may make in regard to how many adjunct faculty constitutes quote-unquote too many. Recent literature evaluating the efficacy of adjunct faculty in education programs focuses almost exclusively on retention and passing rates. Studies range from quantitative to qualitative and encompass all the different types of institutions from 2-year to the different selected varieties of 4-year institutions. My literature review will discuss this in more detail. But specifically, there's a lot of conflicting information in the extant literature revolving around the utilization of adjunct faculty. The next topic to be discussed is adjunct hostility toward the institution and academy and litigation. Lewis in 2000 outlines how overuse and underappreciation of adjunct faculty by their institutions results in feelings of resentment and hostility on the part of adjunct faculty. As of the time of the previous study, adjunct litigation was a newer phenomenon as adjuncts turned to the legal system to redress inequities in the working environment. Lewis 2000 described several instances of litigation surrounding wages, health benefits, and retirement issues, noting that many of them had not found conclusions within the legal system. However, the mere existence of the lawsuits sets precedents for institutional change to alleviate future litigation. The current literature that I'll be presenting in my dissertation does tend to corroborate the discussions outlined in Lewis 2000, and the updated literature review will include a status of the court cases referenced and a discussion of contemporary litigation issues facing institutions. Next, we'll be discussing using adjunct faculty appropriately. Lewis in 2000 honestly and accurately wanted to represent the literature extant, so she gave several examples of positive institutional use of adjunct faculty. Specifically that they employed satisfied part-time faculty and had common policies that were developing goals for utilization of faculty that are commensurate with college goals and not fiscal needs, providing clear expectations, guidelines, and procedural information to new adjunct faculty, and developing systemic inclusion policies that show care and respect for the individual adjunct faculty members. The contemporary literature review will discuss advances made on the part of some institutes to alter and improve the situation for adjunct faculty. The next topic will be adjunct faculty inclusion and institutional support. Professional development, one of the most important aspects of program improvement according to Lewis 2000, is often ignored for adjunct instructors. Support needs for adjunct faculty include clerical needs, orientation programs, and in-service workshops, of which adjunct faculty should be included in the development process. The update is that literature that merely focuses on passing and retention rates ignores the possibility of mitigating factors and looks instead only at the bottom line. This is ineffective for helping administrators identify what practices can facilitate an increase in quality of education offered and thus improve passing and retention rates. The literature that does examine professional development and support services offered to adjunct faculty makes a positive connection between higher levels of support and quality of instruction delivered. One study makes suggestions of how this may be achieved. Developmental education faculty should be encouraged to attend conferences and read current developmental education literature to help them become more knowledgeable and stay current with issues and trends in the field. Sanford, Dainty, Belcher, and Frisbee in 2011 suggested the importance of supplying both intrinsic and extrinsic motivation for adjunct faculty within professional development. Providing adjunct faculty with quality professional development and support can improve the instruction they deliver and are worthwhile endeavors for institutions to facilitate. As Aney and Davidson 2006 note in an article providing suggestions for improving supervision of part-time instructors, it is critical to provide a supportive environment and professional development opportunities that allow part-time faculty to focus on quality teaching and learning while also giving them a stake in the institution's mission.